how this factors into our long-term debt for our bonds. At June 30th, our outstanding premium is at $244,788,000. We also, here, we would reduce it by the refunding of 43.6, add back our 39.9 refunded amount, our new money for the convention center, and the A&I of 36.5. After we make these adjustments, that will leave an outstanding premium of $277,588,000, which increases our overall debt by $32.8 million. And I also like to highlight here that only $29.9 million of our outstanding long-term bond debt is general obligation, which is property tax backed, so it's only 10.8%. And the balance of the outstanding debt is serviced with fees and charges. Any questions?
I have one question for you on the convention center. When you talk about the estimates for the improvements, how many estimates did we get? Is it one estimate? Did we get 3 bids? I mean, how many did we get? Was there
What would that be?
It's a staff estimate when we put the CIP together. We have not gotten bids yet. I don't think we've gotten bids yet. That was staff estimate when we put the CIP together. When we put the CIP together, we don't have hard estimates as a general practice. When we put numbers in there, we use Jay Hood and staff to set those budgets based on market conditions that we know at the time. But we have not gone out for bid.
Okay, but we will get more than one bid?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Absolutely.
This will be a
Through our
competitively
procurement.
bid process through our procurement. We'll get 3, 4, 5, 6, however many people want to bid.
Any other questions?
So this bond issue, just to be clear, we're refunding $44 million in bonds, just refinancing them, right, to a lower interest rate?
Yes.
And
Leveraging the
then-
market for a better rate.
And then the other money that we're talking about is for the convention center that we knew we needed to repair and have already discussed. And then the A&I infrastructure that we already started on. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And we discussed and talked about how we were going to put out bonds to pay for it in the future, which is now is the future.
Yes.
Okay.
And Chris Miller is going to come up here in a minute and talk about the infrastructure, because it's more than downtown. It's actually, it does support downtown for sure, but it also impacts the neighborhoods that are in Witherswash and 8th Street and 9th Street as well. We've done a really good job with the infrastructure on the north end and the south end, and we've now got to concentrate a little bit on the middle. We have, I think in Chris's Meredith's presentation, she'll show.
Those
some of the
retention ponds?
Retention ponds, sewer, water, some of the sewers, 1938. So we're upgrading all of that included with this bond, and this whole project is addressing those needs as well. So it's just more than just the downtown, it's the whole.
That's not necessarily detailed.
Correct.
Yeah.
So Chris?
For Chris come, let me go back to as far as the convention center there, so we're saying, we're estimating $20 million.
Yes, sir.
What if it's 16 million?
Good for
What
us.
happens with the other 4? No, I'm just saying.
We
Do
would-
still go ahead and, I agree it's good for us,
Yeah.
it's gonna cost less, but if we approve this, that we're,
We usually
Going out for
cross
20.
that bridge when we get there.
Yeah.
That could be reprogrammed to another use in the bond. It's allowable by the bonds. It could be maybe additional infrastructure. Maybe it could be additional improvements at the convention center that are going to be needed. We just,
What
Okay.
would be wrong with putting that money into an account somewhere, so if there's future needs, for whatever at the convention center, that money's there available for
that's what
that?
that's why I just said it could be downtown. We could also go to the convention center for future needs and future capital improvements.
is that something that council would talk about when we find out, or is that
We
something
would
that staff is
typically
just
talk
gonna
about
say?
that at the retreat when we talk about capital improvements. We'll say, okay, the
Yeah.
bond issue came in at 16 million, we got 4 million, the convention center needs additional improvements here, that,
Okay.
whatever they are.
Okay,
Okay, I've got another question with respect to downtown. I think I heard this right, that the part of the bond for the downtown is $16+ million, right? And for the same infrastructure needs, we receive from the state $12 million.
Yes, sir, 5 in FY '24 and 7 in '25.
Say that again?
5 in FY '24 and 7 of the 10 in FY '25.
So would we need to bond the whole 16 million instead of just bonding 4 million plus?
I think the project is 27, so you take the 12 off the 27, and that's the 16.
We're already
That was never-
contractually obligated to around 28 million, I believe.
I just want to.
When we first started talking about the downtown infrastructure, it was a $30 million project. Always has been. That's what we voted on. So that number has never changed. The number that has changed are the numbers that we receive from the state. But the cost for the downtown infrastructure has never changed. We've always known it was going to be close to $30 million.
Well, I would prefer a separate bond period for the downtown instead of putting that debt for the downtown on the convention center.
That, I understand what you're saying, Councilman Louder. That gets, then you run into additional costs of issuance with bond attorneys, underwriters, and the like, and that becomes, this is a very efficient way to do it. I understand what you're saying, but if we go that route, you're going to be incurring additional issuance costs.
Let me ask another question. Maybe my thought is wrong on this, but sometime back, we created a mid, correct?
Yes, sir.
I thought the
Yes, sir.
purpose, one of the purposes for that mid was to be able to fund bonding if needed for infrastructure and stuff like that in the downtown.
I think maybe long-term eventually, but I believe the mid is paying for the downtown ambassadors that we have.
Okay. I was
That's generating about 650, give or take.
Okay.
Could I make a suggestion before Chris comes up? I mean, we have our bond counsel here. This is not something that you and Marla and Michelle have sat down and said, this is what we have to do. There's been a lot of work that has gone into proposing this to us,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
there are reasons for it. The bond market, I think, Dr. Connor asked me after the last meeting, she says, she didn't understand, and because at the budget retreat, this is what we talked about. And I said, yes, but at the budget retreat, we didn't even know what the bond market was going to do. And I think it would help council to understand how fluid the bond market is, how quickly it changes, and why this makes sense, and what it actually does to help save the city money. We're not trying to add more debt. We're trying to actually save money. So Bill, if, please.
As you all know, I'm Bill Musser. I'm with Pope Flynn. I've been bond counsel to the city for a bit, and this is David Cheatwood with First Tryon Advisors. And David has helped structure up the financing for the three things we're talking about. One is the downtown infrastructure, one is the convention center debt, and one is the hospitality fee refunding. No matter what if you issue these in three bonds or one, they're going to be payable from the same source of revenues, hospitality fees. That's the dedicated source of revenues to pay each of these projects. So that's the way it'll end up being financed. Now, David can speak to the cost effectiveness of this. The refunding saves in cash flow a considerable amount of money to the city. You can measure it by net present value savings or just by cash flow. I think David can speak to that a little better than I can.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. Mayor, Council, good morning. Specific to the refunding, Mayor, you're correct. The interest rates in the market change every day. As your financial advisor, we're monitoring those interest rates to see when it makes sense to potentially refinance any of your outstanding debt. So the refinancing piece of this proposed borrowing is a refinancing of your 2014A hospitality bonds and your 2014B hospitality bonds. When those were issued in 2014, they had a 10-year no call provision, no prepayment provision, but beginning in year 10, which is 2024, you're able to refinance those for savings if interest rates are such that it produces savings. And so looking at your 2014A bonds, the current interest rate you're paying on those is 5.9%. Those were taxable bonds at the time. That's why it's got a higher interest rate, 5.9%. Based on estimated current market rates, you'd be able to refinance those for a little under 5% right now. So that's what's generating the savings on that piece of it. Similarly, your 2014 B bonds were issued as tax exempt at the time. We'd refund them with tax exempt bonds again. The current interest rate you're paying on those bonds is 4.8%. If you were to refinance those today, you'd be around 3.4%. So similar to refinancing your mortgage, you have an interest rate at, and then if rates drop, you can refinance it, get savings. We are not adding to your debt burden with this refinancing. We are not extending the maturities. You're paying them off on the same time frame, and it's just producing $5.6 million in total cash flow savings, about $380,000 per year, as Marla mentioned. So purely just taking existing debt and lowering the interest rate on those bonds.
And I'm going to really encourage council, while we have these two gentlemen here with us, to ask questions. This is our opportunity in workshop to thoroughly discuss this, to thoroughly understand it before it shows up on our agenda next week.
So when you go out to the market to sell these to whoever is buying them, they don't say this is a 2014 A and B refunding. They say this is a hospitality fee bond from the city of Myrtle Beach paid for by the hospitality fee, guaranteed by the hospitality fee. It doesn't say we're fixing the convention center. It doesn't say we're refunding we're redoing the hotel. It just says you're going to get paid because they have hospitality fees that they've pledged against it. Is that correct?
In the offering document.
Unless you read the entire
Yes,
offering.
that's right. In the offering document, it says the use of proceeds, what's the purpose of the issue, and it will say to make improvements to the convention center and other infrastructure improvements and refund outstanding debt. But yes, at the end of the day, the investors are looking at what's my security, which is a pledge of your hospitality revenues. That's ultimately what they're focused on. Your bonds, you'll have credit ratings. City has credit ratings. You would go and get credit ratings again on this borrowing, and they look at the same thing. They're looking at that, the strength of that pledged hospitality revenue stream.
What is the estimated cost savings that we do all of this together?
When you go to do a public market bond issuance like this, you've got various fees, our fee, Bill's fee, you pay rating agencies, and then you pay an underwriter to go out and sell the bonds to a variety of different investors out there. And so if you split it up into, let's say you separated it by 6 months or so, your underwriting fees will be approximately the same because they're going to get paid based on the amount of bonds that are ultimately sold. So if you split it up, they'll get paid the same. But in terms of the rating fees and the other professional fees, you would pay those, depending on how close in time, it maybe isn't 2 times the fees, maybe it's closer to like 1.5 times the fees, but I would say you would pay up to $250,000 more in additional fees if you split it up.
I have a question on the savings that we talked about, and just round figures. We were just talking about, on the refunding, about $5 million. I also recall, though, the last time we talked about this, in order to achieve that $5 million, we would have to extend the term by 3 years. Am I correct on that?
So you're, in total, if we look at the 2014A and the 2014B in the aggregate, you are paying those off on the same time frame. What we're doing is taking advantage of kind of where interest rates are in the taxable market versus the tax exempt market. And if you bear with me, I'll throw out some dates here. On your 2014A bonds, those currently go out to 2039. Your 2014B bonds go out to 2036. So given where interest rates are in the taxable and the tax exempt, we can enhance the city's savings if we basically shorten the taxable, because those are higher costing, let's pay those off quicker, and then we would extend the tax exempt, but they, in the aggregate, still go out to 2039, which is in the aggregate where your current debt goes out to. So we're not, if we look at this on a blended basis, you're not extending it, but you're right, for the 2014Bs, we're extending those, but in turn, we're shortening the 2014As. And since they all get paid, as Bill said, from the same revenue source, that's what generates that kind of level savings throughout.
If we, as I recall the last time, if we don't extend that one set of bonds and we pay everything off early, basically, you can do that, we would still have a net savings of somewhere around $4 million. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So to save $1 million over 3 years, I'm just a big fan of getting out as much debt as you can, as quick as you can. I see what the savings is, but if it was my total call, I would probably take the $4 million savings and reduce our debt as quickly as possible.
And I'll note, again, I keep saying in the aggregate, they were issued for different purposes at the time, but again, they're all paid from hospitality revenues. So you, in total, are not extending your hospitality debt. You are extending one of the issuances there within that bucket of hospitality debt, but.
I understand. I think another thing that is important, not only for council, especially me as a new council member, but I think for the public in general, because we keep talking about these bonds are guaranteed by hospitality fee, right? So we are based on history, reasonably assured that we will always have the money to pay these off. So we're borrowing so that we can create better things, whether it's convention center or whatever it is, but with the understanding that we have the wherewithal to pay these things off. It's not like we create debt and we're not sure how we're going to pay it off. We already know how we're going to pay it off, and history shows that. Do I have that right?
You do, yeah. I mean, you all have, the city has sufficient revenues to repay this debt, more than sufficient revenues to repay this debt. So, and that's been the case since.
And that's the key point, more than sufficient revenues.
Yeah.
If I could point out that the city has a long-term financing program based on hospitality fees, and part of what is being done by First Tryon to structure the debt service is to have more or less an equal amount of debt service payable in each year. So by accelerating principal or interest or whatever you want to accelerate, you throw off the balance of the cash flows that are going to be due from the city in every year. So I think First Tryon's advice is to level debt service and enable future financings from the hospitality fees, just as these are.
Bill, would you say that it's better that we are using the hospitality fees because it's our visitors that are helping to pay for these projects versus saddling our residents with higher taxes to help pay for these projects?
That would ultimately be council's judgment, but it makes sense to me because these are facilities that are dedicated for the use or for the benefit of the people who visit primarily, so. The convention center in particular.
Okay, are we ready to hear from Chris? Thank you both. Are there any more questions?
No, thank you.
Morning, Council.
Morning.
Just want to give you a brief update on what we've done in the first year. October is our 1-year mark that we started the project. We're approximately 30% in, and have a short video that we want to play you, just kind of give you a brief overview of what we've done so far.
Few years, work has been done to upgrade the infrastructure of Myrtle Beach's downtown and Arts and Innovation District. Not only do the improvements benefit these areas, but also the neighborhoods around 8th and 9th Avenues North, Broadway Street, and down to Wither Swash. The projects were needed for residents. Much of it replaced underground systems originally installed in the 1930s. For the futures of these neighborhoods, the city's projects, including upgrading water lines, sanitary sewer lines, building a new pump station and a stormwater pond, and more, improved the quality of service for Myrtle Beach residents. Now, it's time to finish the project. The next necessary phase improves the quality of life of the neighborhoods. Finishing the project means completing water, sewer, and stormwater drainage upgrades, installing permeable pavers to eliminate the need for additional stormwater storage, safety improvements at the 9th Avenue North and Oak Street intersection, new sidewalks, bike lanes, improved street lighting for public safety, overall landscaping for beautification, dozens of additional parking along Oak Street for the future park and other area amenities and more.
Kind of a lot to take in, but we've been very active. We've been well received by the communities and the neighborhoods that we've been in, the businesses. Everything's worked out very well. Some of our accomplishments, you know, the Balsam and Fourth Avenue North area is basically complete. That's where the new stormwater pond is at. We did water and sewer improvements in there. We did drainage improvements. Now we're getting ready to move down Oak Street, as you know. A lot of that roadway is closed. We're about four to 6 weeks out from completing Oak Street, south of 501. And then probably first of the year, we'll be crossing 501 and then moving into the north side of the district along 8th Avenue and 9th Avenues. So we have, we have everything encompassed. We have underground utilities, power, electric, telephone, water, sewer, storm drainage. So it's all encompassing. Of course, once we're done with that, then we put the roads back. We do our nice sidewalks, our street lighting, improvements in the intersections, et cetera. But it's going very well. It's well needed. It's much needed. Like you had said earlier, we're dealing with areas that were built back in 1938. This is original Myrtle Beach. Some of the sewer manholes don't even have bottoms in them. It was just a brick cone built on top of the dirt. We don't have any concrete bottoms in there. We have some areas in the district that don't have any utilities whatsoever. So if that area is ever developed, we have nothing there to support it. A lot of the original lines are too small for today's capacities. You get anything over a 3 or 4 story building, we cannot serve that development. So this is going to go ahead and bring everything up to today's standards and allow us to build into the future. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Fox, I have a question for you and for council, because we need to work on our legislative agenda and what our request will be to the state for the next legislative session. The last 2 years, we have asked for funding to help with downtown infrastructure. Are we going to continue down that path that may continue to lessen the amount needed here?
We certainly can. It ultimately be a decision for you guys to make, but yeah, I would recommend that. If that's a priority of the council, downtown and continuing with it, which I think it is, that's certainly a major component.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any other questions from council?
Our intention is to put this up for first reading next Tuesday. Continue with it, and we'll have second reading on the 22nd, I believe, is it? So this will be on, unless I'm not hearing anything to the contrary, that we're going to, but just, you'll see it next Tuesday.
And I just want to encourage all of us, if we still have questions, concerns, if things are not clear, we also have Marla, we have Bill and Chris available to us to help answer these questions and help us understand.
By all means, between now and the end of the week, we can set up conference calls or Zooms, or whatever we need to do to get more questions develop.
Thank you.
I just got one comment. And I appreciate all the hard work y'all have put in. I had questions. I think that a lot of the questions were answered today. You guys were very detailed, our bond counsel. I appreciate the detail that you put into it and everything, so I understand it a lot better. And people really need to realize that we need to preserve our tourism, our hospitality taxes to come in here to help support all this stuff. Otherwise, our residents are going to have to pick up the tab. So we really have to focus on that.
And we're fortunate that we're a city that has that available to us.
Exactly right.
All right. Let's see, where are we? We will now do the Sports Center update.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council, City Leadership. My name is Jason Clement. I'm CEO and founding partner for the Sports Facilities Companies. I'm joined by our General Manager, Mark Beal, Daniel Hennessy, and Blake Barbie, who is the executive leadership at the Myrtle Beach Sports Center. It is really great to be with you again here to get to present to you the impact that the Sports Center has made for the city. So we have put together, hopefully it's brief, 10 or 15 minute presentation here. We're going to cover a little bit of the history for a couple of the new council members that are here, and then we're going to do a quick review on the performance, and then talk about what the next 10 years look like. It's hard to believe, but this is the upcoming year's the 10-year anniversary for the Sports Center, and it's something that we believe should be celebrated for the impact that it's made in the community, as well as the visitors that it has drawn to the tourism destination that is Myrtle Beach. So briefly on the history of it, you know, our organization, it's just over 20 years old, 2003. We help municipalities plan, develop, and then ultimately operate youth and amateur sports complexes around the country. We've done the planning for just about 3,000 communities. Not all of those are built or are feasible, or municipalities have the wherewithal to be able to pull off a destination like what we have here at Myrtle Beach. We manage about 70, a little less than 70 venues across the country. And Myrtle Beach, for the last 10 years, has really been, the Sports Center has really been a crown jewel for sports tourism destination. And it's really been on the forefront because of the leadership sitting behind me in pushing the industry forward. And we can talk a little bit about how that's evolving over the next decade as well. So the goals, the current goals for the Sports Center are here. These are the top 5 that we've been charged with as a result of your leadership. 1, optimize visitor spend and economic impact through visitors that are coming to play sports tourism events, right? Tournaments, events, and those sorts of things. So that's goal number 1, fill as many hotel rooms as possible and maximize that visitor spend. Goal 2 is exceed the budget. You know, we're provided a budget each year as part of the budgeting cycle. Hey, let's make sure we hit that and exceed that. 3, continue to maintain proactively with preventative maintenance a best-in-class facility. And if any of you have been out to the Sports Center recently, it does not feel like it's a 10-year-old building. Our team does an extraordinary job and takes personal pride in making sure it continues to show well for the city. 4th, make sure that we're providing exceptional guest experience. We recognize that these visitors coming into the city, we're the storefront. We're the first experience they get. We don't put a sports facilities company's logo on our lapel. We put City of Myrtle Beach. And we want to make sure that we represent well, with excellence, the quality of service that you all expect from us. And then 5th, optimize the non-peak seasons. Many of these indoor sports centers have a peak and prime season, January through July primarily. What are we doing August through December to make sure that we're keeping it busy and we're optimizing the opportunity there? So those are the 5 goals we've been charged with. You can see in addition to those over the next 10 years, we want to make sure that we're innovating, that you know, this venue weathers well, and that it's set up for the next generation of sports tourism and events that are starting to shift the industry a little bit, and then make sure the services that we're providing on top of those events serve well also. And as the facility continues to age, make sure that we're proactively getting in front of any issues that come with a 10 to 20-year-old building. Okay, so we're going to do a quick review of the financial performance. Goal number 1 is optimizing visitor spend and economic impact. You can see over the last 5 years, that's steadily increased. Obviously, 2021, we were coming out of the pandemic, and we were proud that the Sports Center was one of the first things that drove visitors, you know, back to Myrtle Beach coming out of that pandemic. But you can see we've increased year over year, and the number of events are higher quality of events now. So we're regularly shifting out events for higher producing events in terms of hotel rooms, visitor stay, and spend. You know, we've got Big Brother here that we're all tethered to, and we've got some sophisticated reporting related to geofencing and some other things. This tells us exactly where every visitor that walks inside of the Sports Center comes from. So as you can see, it's become a regional destination. It's an important tool for the city to drive people into the marketplace to spend. And then we're able to also categorize the type of visitor that we have. We'll provide all of this to you so you can get into it if you geek out on this type of reporting and analytics like I do. But the punchline here is each one of these visitor types are high-quality visitors, meaning they have disposable income, they want to spend their income when they come on vacations or turnications, as we call it, and you can see what some of the characteristics are of each of these visitor types that come in, and they're pretty well narrowed. They nail it as a result of what we're all tethered to with our cell phones. When you take a look at Goal 2, exceed the operating profit objective. The dark blue chart is the budget for the year. The light blue is what the actual result is or was. You can see each year we've managed the venue to beat the bottom line budget. We're capable of pulling the levers necessary to make sure that we hit this budget. We could actually exceed these budgets in pretty significant ways by maybe downgrading the economic impact with a more profitable event. So we're constantly making sure that we hit the bottom line budget while driving the events that bring the most visitors to drive the hotel room nights that ultimately allow you to pay off the bonds that you just talked about. So that's our goal, that's our objective, and every year that we go through the budgeting cycle, we work with city leadership to make sure we balance that well so that we achieve the objectives for the city. Each year we engage in capital improvements. I mentioned the preventative maintenance and proactively managing what some of those issues and upgrades need to be. This is always part of the budgeting cycle. We just thought it might be helpful for you to see some examples of those types of projects that our team is leading and managing on your behalf. And then Goal 4, monetize ancillary revenue streams. So these are the things on top of the events that really drive the bottom line and the financial performance. So one is food and beverage, and you can see that that's improved year over year. Our operating team is on this. We've got obviously key performance indicators and benchmarks that we're tracking against every single month. If something gets out of whack, we get it back in. And one of the great things about the team that we have here, they really set an example for the rest of our organization. We've had a lot of leaders come out and see the way that this team operates, and you may not be aware of it, but the leadership here is influencing communities across the country. Our mission is to improve the health and economic vitality of the communities we serve, so our mission here is to improve the health and economic vitality of Myrtle Beach, and you should know that this venue has become an example for the entire industry and for the entire country as it relates to serving and improving mental, social, physical health, as well as the economic impact for communities across the country. So thank you for that. In addition, parking, ticketing, live streaming, these are other revenue streams that we are focused on here. Sponsorship is something that we look at as well with community partners. It's improved every year, and this year looks to be, if we hit our goal, exceed our goals, right? It looks to be the best year that we're going to have. Okay, Goal 5 is the direct spend in the shoulder season performance. So we thought we'd give you an executive summary here of the types of events that we're bringing in. It's not just sports tourism events, but we've got non-traditional sports as well as non-sports tourism events. And again, the goal is to keep that venue busy every single week so that we can continue to serve the community well. In addition to the tourism events, sports and non-sports alike, if you go out there any given day, you'll see local residents utilizing the venue as well for pickleball, basketball, volleyball, and the like. So as we look at the next 5-year objectives here, you don't need me to read point by point, but we want to continue on the trajectory that we're on. We want to continue to provide the results that we have for the city. And we then want to innovate and make sure that the venue can transition or translate to serve the next generation products and services and needs that these visitors would have. We're constantly evaluating how to best utilize the space. We have a couple of spaces that are underutilized right now, and so we're going to come back to city leadership with some recommendations on how to best utilize that space and transform it in a way that can make an impact for our visitors. One of the other areas that we think we can improve on is storytelling. I think we do a pretty good job of sharing with the community some of the good stories that are coming out of the Sports Center, but we're going to have a really proactive marketing campaign that kicks off next year as part of the 10-year anniversary. We think we should celebrate that and make a big deal out of it, and we're going to improve the storytelling as we move forward there. Danielle and the team do a great job with the marketing and the business development for events, attracting the best events that make Myrtle Beach a crown jewel for sports tourism. We want to tell some of those stories in and around the public here. As I mentioned, we want to continue to bring new additional services for some of those underutilized spaces, and we want to continue our transparent financial reporting in partnership with the city leadership. Really quickly here, for those that may not be as familiar with sports tourism, I know it's been an important tool for the city for a long time. This is, if you can read this, this is the way that sports tourism has been in the past. So you've had an event organizer that looks for a place to play, right? We're the destination in the upper right-hand corner, and we're the venue in the bottom right-hand corner there. And the way it's moving now is adding the spaghetti list to it here. The economy is massive. It's moving into a $60 billion economy. 10 years ago, it was but a quarter of that. It is exploding, and you probably all are investing in that with your kids and grandkids as well. And so what we're trying to do is position the Sports Center now to be able to take advantage of some of the blue line economies also. There are opportunities as we look at marketing partnerships, as we look at things like live streaming. And this map represents what was analog. When you go out to book an event or a tournament, oftentimes it's based on relationships, and if this is my one chance to brag a little bit on our organization, nobody has more relationships around the country than we do with the best event organizers. That said, new digital opportunities are coming to the table, like this group called Play Easy that is represented here. Think of it as the TripAdvisor or Yelp for sports tournaments. And what we've done is built a strategic partnership with them to make sure that Myrtle Beach and our venues are at the top of the search engine for event organizers that are looking for the very best destinations. And obviously we made that investment because we want to bring those best organizers to the city here. I think that's the punchline to this spaghetti map that you're looking at here. Ultimately then, as we look at the vision and goals and future capital improvement objectives that we're going to work with the city staff on, health, safety, and wellness is priority number one for us to make sure that the venue's good there. 2, making sure that we can deliver to our existing customer base with what they've experienced in the past, and that's best-in-class facilities and best-in-class services. And then 3rd, what can we do to increase revenue generation in some of those lower revenue per square foot spaces? So more to come on that as we start to look at the budgeting cycle for the next fiscal year. Obviously, you all will approve anything that we recommend here, but we'll put that in place so you all can evaluate it. One example is the AC unit. We think we can get a couple more years out of it. That said, if there's a funding mechanism today, that might be something to look at. So we just thought we would, put this up as an example. If you look at wood floor resurfacing, this is something we completed last year. We probably don't need to do it again for 10 years from now, but we want to make sure that you've got an expanded capital plan in front of you, and just know that we're, managing that proactively on your behalf. And then celebrating the 10 years. You're going to see more of this to come in terms of a marketing campaign, social media. We're going to run a couple of events that celebrate 10 years at Myrtle Beach Sports Center. There are a couple of major industry shows that we were just at last week, the team show, as well as Sports ETA, the association there. And we're just going to make a big deal out of Myrtle Beach as a destination and what we've been able to accomplish together, over the last 10 years. It should be a lot of fun, and we look forward to you all sharing these stories with your network and platform. We've gone through the keys to success here, but as you take a look at that, if you've got any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out. I know the manager mentioned Zooms and phone calls on other issues. We are happy to do the same if you have any questions about how things are operating, or if you have any suggestions as well. That's great. So here's the summary for us. Over $230 million in direct spend since opening. As you can see, that's ramping up and hitting a crescendo year over year is, our best year. We've had over 500,000 guests per year as we look at it. If you were to look in the industry and ask about the reputation of the sports center amongst, the sea of facilities and venues that people could go utilize, we're at the top. It is the brass ring in terms of sports centers and where people want to be because of the destination, not just because of us, but we're also providing the service that want people to come back year over year. The ancillary revenue streams are continuing to build and continue to grow, and we constantly have our eye on how do we need to innovate and what the vision looks like for the next 10 years. The last piece for us is that our contract is up next spring, and so we're looking for an extension there and a renewal, which we've done already, with you all. And so we are proposing, and I wanted to share this for you. Presently, our management fee with you all is the lowest out of the almost 70 venues that we have. We're looking for an incremental increase of that, which would still keep it the second lowest of the almost 70 that we have. But we think that is is representative of the relationship that we've built and the importance of that partnership with us, and I hope you understand that and recognize that as well. As you could imagine, from 5 years ago, there's been a little bit of inflation and increases in cost and whatnot, so we'd like to capture that through a small increase to 15 and then a 3% annual escalator. I think the request would be to allow us to negotiate that with city staff and leadership, and obviously any renewal contract or amendment would come back to you all and you can punch holes in it and beat me up a little bit and give me a hard time. But in the meantime, we're really proud of what we've accomplished here. We're grateful for the partnership with you, and I hope you see it as additive and accretive to what you're trying to do broadly with the city. So thank you for the time. Here to answer any questions you might have, and I'll probably pull up the venue leadership team if you have anything specific.
Any questions?
I'm interested in knowing your involvement across the country. If you had an opportunity to add space to this facility for a certain sport that you see is growing exponentially across the country, what would that be?
Yeah, I would say at this point in time, it would be an expansion of the number of courts that we have right now. There's a theory of, this is not proper grammar, and I know that, but be who you is. We talk about that, be who you are, and we are really good at the indoor events right now. I think what we'd want to do is expand and scale that so that we could have deeper tournament depths, which would drive more hotel room nights, and it would also provide for more flexibility on the indoor space side. And then and you'll see this in our recommendations, we would look at the ancillary revenue streams. How do we upgrade the F&B offering, the family entertainment offerings, and the retail offerings that would allow us to serve the guests that are already coming in so that we can continue to, we can go deeper with what we're already the best at in the country.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything?
Let me pick up on that.
Yeah.
What Dr. Connor said, you had mentioned earlier underutilized space. What is that?
So we've got an office space that was designed for 10 years ago, and we've become more efficient with our team. So we have some office space that doesn't generate revenue that we could carve off and create retail or some other sort of revenue generating space, that sort of thing. If you've been out there, there's also a patio that is, overhead. If we could enclose that space and make it revenue generating as well, there's some opportunities.
Again, picking up on what Dr. Connor brought up, if I ask you sporting events, what are the two potentially continuing to be the most profitable for you and for us? What are they? What do we do? What do we need to do to expand those?
Yeah, you guys can come up if I miss this, but girls' sporting events are exploding right now across the country, and if you look at the benchmarks here, that's right, if you look at the benchmarks here, they also bring more guests with them. More grandparents and parents come along to watch their daughters or granddaughters' events than their sons, and they tend to spend more in terms of incremental food and beverage, retail, and that sort of thing. So I would answer your question with one, volleyball would be something that we'd look at. Cheer and dance is something that we've continued to expand over recent years also, and those types of programming. Anything that I'm missing there?
You must have nailed it because
So
they're
far, so
nodding
good.
their heads.
Everyone from the chamber is too.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, when you look at other sports centers across the country, especially those that are owned by municipalities, do any of them have naming rights sponsorships on their buildings?
Yeah, we do, and probably 7 or 8 across the country. So that's an opportunity as we look at the sponsorship and marketing partnerships as well. And it's something we've been chasing down. We just haven't arrived at a deal that we think is worthy of your scrutiny yet. Any sponsorship deal we do needs to be approved by city staff. You don't want us going out and doing a naming rights deal with something that you may not want to be associated with. But we're constantly, we're running that down and evaluating it, yeah.
And does it make sense for the size facility that we are with 500,000 guests a year?
Yes.
Any other questions? Great report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate the partnership.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, let me see where we are. F. Okay, we will now welcome Tracy Connor to give us his first Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce quarterly update in his role as interim CEO and president.
And
So,
I'm bringing a little help with me.
are you worried we're going to be tough?
Some. Mayor Bethune, council, we would like to thank you for the opportunity to present an update on the Myrtle Beach Chamber and CVB. Today, we have 4 of our senior staff members that are experts in group sales, marketing, finance, and business development. Our first presenter, Bob Harris, Executive Vice President for Group Sales. Following Bob is Stuart Butler, our Chief Marketing Officer. The third presenter, Randy McKeel, our Chief Financial Officer. And wrapping up the presentation, Cindy Getting, our Executive Vice President for Business Development. Again, thank you, and please ask questions. Try to stump them.
Okay. I noticed he was backing away from the microphone when he said that.
Good morning, Mayor Bethune and members of the City Council. We thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. And I want to thank you, too, because very often we come to you to help with groups. They want welcome letters. They want you to come greet them and thank them for being here. They want you to come have breakfast at 7 in the morning and dinner at 7 at night and to be in their parade. So we ask a lot of you guys with those groups, and I want to say thank you for that. It does mean a lot to these groups. Are we using this? Wow, cool. All righty, want to give you an update on group sales. So far this year, we've had 606 group leads, and we work on a calendar year. That is a good number for us. We're up 11% over 2023 during the same period, and we're up 29% over where we were in 2019, pre-pandemic. So we're very pleased to see this number. Group leads are any time that we get a group that inquires of us 10 rooms or more that's interested in coming to Myrtle Beach. And so then we reach out to our partners here at our hotels, our convention center, our sports center, trying to find out if we're the right match for them. We always think we are, but we have to convince them of that as well. Our meetings and convention leads are one of the ones that have really seen a big increase this year. We're actually up 157% over where we were in 2019. And those leads are very important to us because they're often in the fall and they're also in the spring. We talked a lot today. We've heard people talk a lot about quality of life and what it means to the community that we have. Again, I mentioned meetings. 93% of the meetings leads that we put out there and the contracted business we bring to this destination is either in the fall of the year, spring, or in the winter months. So again, that's one of our most important market segments, and they do spend quite a bit of money in the destination as well. Mayor, I have to thank you for a challenge that you gave to us a couple of years ago when you said, I'm tired of going to the South Carolina Municipal Authority and it always being in Hilton Head and other cities. Why can't we get it back to Myrtle Beach? Thanks to your efforts and being on that board and helping us to secure that, we have gotten that to come to Myrtle Beach now First time we had an opportunity is 2027. But that one group will bring over 2,000 room nights to this destination and over $1 million in economic impact to the city of Myrtle Beach. So we're thanking you for that. And if any of you others have groups that you go to or conferences you travel to, call me. We'd be happy to evaluate those and see if we could bring those into our destination as well. Motor coach groups are very important to us. Those all come pretty much in the fall, and they also come during the spring of the year. It's an important market segment because it also hits a lot of our attractions, our theaters, our other restaurants that don't have business during that time of the year. We have always had a strong adult market here for motor coach groups. We're now trying to get more student itineraries built. We're working to develop STEAM or STEM itineraries or curriculum-based itineraries for science, as well as those for history. For history, will allow us to bring people into places like the Myrtle Beach Color School Museum, as well as Charlie's Place, to talk about the history and the heritage of our destination, which we think is an important part to do, and kind of an untold story for our destination with a lot of visitors. Family reunions still continue to come in, as well as military reunions. The one thing I say that we see there is that it's becoming much more multi-generational now. We're seeing not just the people who served, we're seeing their children and their grandchildren come in as well. But that's a very fast-growing market segment. It's back to pre-pandemic levels already. A lot of people don't realize that we also have a Canadian office. We have an office in Toronto as well as one in Montreal. Our Montreal rep was here last week, but they're working very hard to grow that business back. We've all heard about snowbirds. They come in during those winter months and they stay with us, but we get a lot of Canadian visitors throughout the year, so we're trying to grow that market back as well. Sports update, I don't feel like I should say a whole lot because the team just said a lot of great stuff, but sports, while it does bring in a lot of business during the summer, almost 40% of that business is in the off-season or the shoulder seasons as well, and it continues to be our largest group market segment that we have. Last week we had, or 2 weeks ago, we had our second annual Myrtle Beach Sports Symposium at the Sheraton just down the street, and that's a chance for us to talk to all of our partners in the destination about why sports is important, what they need to do to get more involved, and what we're doing to try to drive that sports market with our partners to the destination. Some of the groups we're working to bring into the destination include Conference Carolinas Track and Field that will return to the destination. That's at Doug Shaw right here in the city, but that's going to be back in 26 and 27. We also work with Coastal Carolina to submit bids. They have to be part of the bidding process for NCAA tournament. But we're working on NCAA Golf Regional Championships, which would come in 26 and 27 at courses throughout the region. And then we're also bidding again on the 26-27 NCAA Track and Field. We had them here this past year at Doug Shaw. Huge economic impact into our destination this past spring, and it's business we want to bring back again. And at this time, I'll stop talking unless you have some questions, and I'll turn it over to Stuart Butler, who heads up our marketing team. Any questions about groups? All right, I'll look for any of those leads you have too, okay? Thank you very much.
Good morning,
Good
Madam
morning.
Mayor and City Council. Thank you for having us today. Just a comment following up on Bob's slides. The meetings and especially the sports are super important to our community. Not only do they bring a base of business, but they extend our shoulders. A lot of this business is coming in the off-season. A lot of destinations have a lot of business travel. We don't get a lot of that. So these meetings and groups give what we call compression to our market. What it allows our leisure hotels to do is raise the rate slightly because they have a base of business from the groups. The other thing I really like about the groups is it's bringing in a new generation of visitor. As we know, Myrtle Beach area is phenomenally good at repeat visitation, actually leads the nation. About 2/3 of the folks that are here have been here before. And so when we bring in sports events, especially the youth sport, we're bringing in and introducing a next generation that will be coming with their kids in the future. So really, really important. I'm going to give us a little update on where we are year to date from a performance perspective with lodging. I wanted to start here talking about TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor is a good indicator for us of how our market is doing relative to the competition. TripAdvisor has always presented us with data from an international perspective and shown us how much interest there is for every destination in the US from a global perspective. We asked them this year to start breaking that down domestically and just look at Americans, where they're choosing to travel, where they're searching for. And this is data from TripAdvisor from June, and what you can see on the table on the right here, the left column, this is domestic versus international. Myrtle Beach was actually the third most popular destination according to TripAdvisor from their data for the month of June this year. Now, I'm a marketer, right? I look at New York, I look at Las Vegas, who are above us, they're not beaches. This means we're the most popular beach destination in the country for domestic travel. And not a lot of people know that. We remained the #1 beach destination for July as well. Orlando actually jumped ahead of us, still no beaches. Let's talk about how we're doing from an economic perspective. So this is nuanced. This is STR data, which stands for Smith Travel Research. It's the global standard for accommodations occupancy. We use it as a tool. It represents about 43% of our market right now. There's a bias in this. What it represents is primarily flagged hotels, meaning Marriott's, Hilton's, the franchised hotels. What it doesn't represent well yet is independent properties, like Councilwoman Hatley's properties, independent, right? Year to date, this is through June, we're actually up about 6% from an STR perspective. But what we're seeing, and this is a global economic trend that we're seeing, is this is a different type of economy than we've ever seen. In the past, when there's been tightening, i.e. higher inflation or recession, what we've seen is people swim down. So if I stayed at a luxury hotel, I might swim down to an upscale. If I was upscale, I might go mid-scale, I might go economy. That's always happened through every recession. It happened in 2001, it happened in 2008 and 2009. That's not happening this time. What we're seeing is the economy travelers dropping out of the market, but the mid-tier and above are staying where they were. They're not willing to sacrifice on their accommodations. So what we're seeing is the mid-scale and above properties, especially the flag properties, are doing fairly well this year. And on average, we're up about 6% year to date from an occupancy perspective. And this leads the nation, by the way, certainly higher than the national average, certainly higher than South Carolina. And we're not seeing that trend in some of our neighbors like Hilton Head and Savannah. They're actually seeing a decrease year over year in occupancy. We're seeing the increase, but again, it's primarily flags, it's primarily mid-scale and above. So the independent economy product is struggling this year. And we've got to recognize that, and we've got to figure out what can we do to help that, because it is a large part of our accommodation set. So we'll talk about that in a second. Any questions on that? Okay. So let's look at this from a revenue perspective for the city. So this is a chart of ATAX year to date through June. What we can see is we've seen year-over-year growth. We're actually up through June about 2.5% from an ATAX collection perspective, which is great, right? We did see a dip in April. We expected this. We fully anticipated that dip. It was primarily due to an early Easter. Last time we had the early Easter was in 2018, and we saw the same exact trend. We anticipated it. But we've been, from an ATAX collection perspective, we've been up about 2.5%. So that tells you something. If occupancy is up 6%, or 2.5%, this is up to 2%, our ADR has suffered a little bit. So we're charging a little bit less on average this year. Where it gets really interesting is shopping as much. So this has had a real impact. TDF's down about 2% year to date. Even though as many people or more are coming and they're staying at some of the mid-scale and above hotels, they're not spending as much when they're in market. So again, it's something we've got to try to figure out. Any questions on that?
Stuart, do you have any idea how grocery stores are doing compared to restaurants?
Yeah, they seem to be doing pretty well. Your hypothesis, I would assume, is that people are eating in their rooms, right? We are seeing that. It's one of the advantages Myrtle Beach has, right? Because a lot of our accommodation product is not just typical hotel product. It's condotel, meaning it has kitchen facilities. Not a lot of destinations have that flexibility. And so it is an advantage, and I think it's one of the reasons we're still leading the nation in terms of year-over-year occupancy growth. But yeah, you're exactly right. People are spending more in grocery stores. So this chart right here is a little complicated. We have developed, and we're the only destination in the world that has this to our knowledge, a predictive model. We're using artificial intelligence, we're using STR data, but we're also using hundreds of other parameters from gas prices, interest rates, consumer index, confidence, intent to travel, tons of things. And we're trying to project out 6 months what occupancy is going to be. And what I can tell you is that data has been really on point. What you'll see here is the blue line was our mean projection. The dotted lines were our in and out of bounds. The green is actuals year to date, and then the orange was last year. So this is what we projected was going to happen. So we stayed within the bounds except for Hurricane Debbie. We haven't figured out how to factor in weather events yet. We're still working on that. But what this tells us is we're doing relatively well. You know, July in this case was a little softer. September, what we've done, and I'll talk about how we've done it in a second, is we've increased some of our marketing efforts, especially towards the economy traveler, and that seems to be working. One of our hypotheses is that the people that wanted to travel but couldn't because they didn't have the means will travel in the off-season. So we're hoping to see the economy product is actually going to do okay September, October this year, especially if the weather holds out. So stay tuned for our next report to see if that bore out, but we're trying to catalyze that. All right. So let's talk about what we're trying to do. So we're on a mission, it was talked about earlier on today. Our primary objective on the CVB, which to remind you of that, that's the Convention and Business Bureau. We represent this destination as the destination marketing organization. When people ask us what we do, we say we are here to improve the quality of life of the residents of this community. That's what the tourism economy is designed to do. Our job is to maximize the impact on the residents. And so we want to make sure that we're continuing to provide for the vision that this council has set, which is we want to elevate this destination, bringing higher value visits, people that book earlier, stay longer, spend more, return more frequently, especially in the off-season. We're going to continue to do that. That's our core mission. That's what improves the quality of life of our residents. That's what drives the ATAX and the hospitality fees that allows us to invest in infrastructure. But at the same time, because we have a lot of economy product, we have to be cognizant of that. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We've got to continue to drive a base of business through groups and meetings, but also through economy travel. And so we've expanded our campaigns this year to include more direct consumer programmings that are going to talk about how to travel on a budget, what you can do here that's affordable, things like that. And we've also formed a coalition of local, some of our investors at the Chamber that are local independent hoteliers, and we created a sort of advisory panel, and we're talking to them about how can we directly target consumers, especially in our drive markets, to come and experience that amazing vacation, but maybe on a budget. And then third, we're having to be more agile. We're having to react faster to the economy, but also to weather conditions. You know, one of the things we've seen historically is when there's a hurricane, that there's a 2 to 3 week hangover afterwards. People think we're wiped off the face of the earth. And sometimes, you know, there's a lot of damage, like we've seen recently this week. Sometimes there's not. But what we've learned is the media will report and report and report that a storm is coming, but then as soon as it's passed, if there is no damage, they stop reporting. So our job is to get the word out. And so we're trying to do more sophisticated tactics to overcome that hangover. It worked really well with Debbie. We introduced a satellite media tour this year where we went to local TV stations and we talked about family travel in August because it was family travel, or in September, sorry, because it was family travel month coming up. And so that seemed to help. We shortened the hangover. But we're also looking at the economy and trying to decide, trying to determine when do we need an increased budget to try to boost this economy traveler. We think, and we're seeing this in our previous projection, that September is actually doing better than projected because we've done this increase in economy traveler promotion. Finally, I want to talk about a couple of projects that we're working on that I think will continue to elevate the brand. One is culinary. So when you look at any destination in the world, the top reason people visit there can change. For us, it's the beach. Always has been, probably always will be the beach. For somewhere like New York, it's sightseeing. For Orlando, it's Disney. But when you look at the number 2 and 3 reason people travel, it's usually the same. It oscillates between shopping and dining. And so dining is a way for us to elevate the destination. And so we developed a show about 2 years ago called Chef Swap at the Beach. One of you has been on that show. It was in the finale of season 1. And we just wrapped up season 3 of that on the Cooking Channel this Saturday, featuring the Culinary Institute. We had 2 students compete with 2 local restaurateurs as well. It was phenomenally received. We're reaching a lot of people with that, but we're not done there with just Chef Swap. We also working on telling the broader story. We've partnered with the James Beard Foundation. We're doing a lot of work with them. We just came back from an event in New York where we introduced the Myrtle Beach product. We took Heidi Vukoff of Hook and Barrel and a couple of other chefs up there to introduce them to Southern hospitality and to local cuisine. Everything we took was from here. The logistics of that were kind of interesting to figure out. We found out you can rent a freezer van and take all the ingredients. So we took locally caught shrimp and fish and all local farm produce. It was a great event. And we talked to a lot of media folks while we were there, including folks like the New York Times, NBC Today. And so we're hoping to get a lot of media attention from that. And then finally, this project is most near and dear to my heart. Did we lose the slides? It's just a logo, so it's okay. We don't need a slide. But chefs, we just talked about that. Traveling the spectrum. And so a lot of you guys know and have been instrumental in supporting this community's strengths related to sensory-friendly travel. We are the most welcoming city in the world when it comes to people with neurodiversity, and that's been recognized nationally. We've gotten a lot of press because of that, but we want to tell that story globally as well. We've been working on a TV show called Traveling the Spectrum for about 1.5 years now. I think a lot of you have seen the trailer. That trailer, I'm proud to say, has hit over 1 million views, which is phenomenal. We've never had a show like that hit that kind of an audience with just the trailer. And we've been working hard to find out a distribution point. And I was really hoping to tell you specifically where that is today, but we're not quite allowed to. I'm hoping in the next 2 weeks we can. But I can tell you that the show has been picked up by a major streaming service provider and will be airing internationally later this year. And so that show is going to put Myrtle Beach on the map like nothing else we've ever done before. It shows the hospitality that we have here. It shows the love and the compassion we have here, the beautiful amenities we have here, and the amazing facilities we have here. So we're super excited to share that with you at a later date in more detail, but maybe off the record when media are watching, I'll tell you behind closed doors where that is. But yeah, that concludes, oh no, it doesn't conclude my report. I've got a couple of events coming up. We just had the chili cook-off. Did anyone make it out to the chili cook-off? Sunday was a lot of fun. Thank you for the support. We had local area high schools competing in a Battle of the Bands. We're hoping to expand that. We'll do an economic impact study on that like we do all our events. That'll probably come at our next update. But we also have coming up the Myrtle Beach Invitational, the Myrtle Beach Bowl, which will be 2 days before Christmas this year. Obviously, the Winter Wonderland at the beach. And then returning next year is the Myrtle Beach Classic in, again, Mother's Day weekend of 2025. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Randy, who's going to talk about finances. But before I do, is there any questions from the marketing side?
Any questions?
Well, Stuart, you said, and I think you and I have talked about it, you said that the goal was to improve the quality of life for our residents.
Yes.
I think that doesn't get shown, that story doesn't get told enough in the local community.
We agree.
We're bringing tourists here, but the real goal of bringing these tourists here is to improve the quality of life for our residents.
Mm-hmm.
I think that story needs to be shouted from the rooftops.
Yeah, it's a topic we've had a lot of
show how we're
conversation.
doing it.
Yeah, we're 100% in agreement. It's a conversation we've had a lot of in our office over the last few weeks, and it's something I think you're about to see a major change in how we communicate that. But I mean, off the top of my head, I mean, a lot of the infrastructure projects we're paying for is hospitality fee, like we're talking about. The tax breaks for property taxes in the city are all, primarily paid for by tourists. A lot of the roads, 2/3 are paid for by tourists. So there's a lot of benefits, not to mention the events. We wouldn't have world-class events like the Myrtle Beach Classic, CCMF,
Chili
Myrtle Beach
cook-off.
Bowl, the chili cook-off. They wouldn't be here.
Right.
We wouldn't have 2,000 restaurants along the Grand Strand without tourists. We wouldn't have over 1,000 attractions. There's tremendous things. We wouldn't be able to keep our beaches as beautiful and pristine and renourished as we do without the tourists. So the tourists are helping us improve our quality of life. And it is a story we need to do a better job communicating, for sure.
Just one question. You showed us that Myrtle Beach is the #1 beach destination.
Yep.
Are you considering incorporating that into any of your marketing?
Yeah, we do. It's tough because it fluctuates, and superlatives are hard to substantiate unless you cite the specific source. But we try to use superlatives. We try, especially on the international, right, where I think there's a big opportunity for us because we get overlooked by Florida. And candidly, we haven't been considered by a lot of international. In the U.S., we have a lot of consideration. A lot of awareness. Internationally, people don't really know where we are, so we're really trying to explain that we are the #1 beach in the U.S.
for domestic travelers and hoping that that transfers to the international market. But yeah, we're doing a good job getting the word out, and people are choosing Myrtle Beach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. So now we're going to talk about how we invested your ATAX and TDF. Is it working? Okay. The first slide I have is the Longwoods International update on our return on investment for the destination. And for every $1 invested in advertising with Visit Myrtle Beach, we see a return of $143 in direct visitor spending and $20 in local tax revenue for a total ROI of $163 for every dollar invested in tourism. So the second slide I have is the Myrtle Beach ATAX. For April through June, we invested $386,189 total to reach visitors more than 50 miles away. And that's broken down by digital and social and search are the biggest investment at around 44%. This, along with TV and outdoor and print, comes to around 60% for all traditional advertising. General consumer promotion is 24%. Group sales, international, and golf, the three specialty markets, equaled 11%. Creative and content development and research, 3%, and destination publicity and golf promotion, 5%. And this is all for ATAX. Do you have any questions on how we invested your funds for ATAX? Okay. And then the final slide I have is looking at April through June TDF. We invested $7,962,031 total to reach visitors out of state. And broken down, it is digital and social and search were the biggest investment, around 30%. This, along with TV and outdoor and print, comes to around 40% for all traditional advertising. Golf was 13% due to the Myrtle Beach Classic event in May. General consumer, group sales, and international, the three specialty markets, equaled 20%. Creative and content development, 14%. Destination publicity and research, 5%, and air service for the nonstop flight markets, 3%. Any questions on how we invested the TDF funds for advertising?
What was the total TDF spent in marketing in 2023? Probably don't have that question today, but it's one I'd like to answer. And what has the total been for 2024 thus far?
So I don't have those numbers with me, but last year our TDF revenue was about $36 million. And so I know we carried some of that forward with the audit into this fiscal year. So I could get you those numbers.
Sure. Thank you.
For last year and also where we are as of this year.
Thank you.
Okay. More questions? Okay. Okay, we just talked about how we are good stewards and invest your funds for tourism efforts. Now we want to talk about how we invest in our community, which we talked about earlier, funded by private dollars through our memberships and sponsorships. And here to talk about that, I'd like to introduce Cindy Geddick, who spearheads our community efforts. Cindy.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
This morning, I'm going to be talking about several programs of the Chamber, but they're not only for our members, they are to engage our community. So the first one that I'd like to talk about is Keep Myrtle Beach Beautiful. This year, we have successfully received three grants totaling $17,000. We received 24 cigarette canisters, which have been distributed among hotels in Myrtle Beach for installation. We've completed a total of 20 events so far this year that include cleanups and beautification projects. We recently received the Lower Region Group Leadership Award from the South Carolina Litter Control Association, as well as being named to the President's Circle for 2023-24 by Keep America Beautiful. And our next cleanup is going to be on October 28th from 8 to 11 a.m. in the Ramsey Acres community.
I like that.
Michael, have coffee for folks, won't you?
Next, Leadership Grandstand. Hard to believe, Class 45 just kicked off the 10-month program on August 15th. We have the largest class ever this year with 34 participants. Of course, each participant is required to complete the 75 hours of community service between several organizations, the Ann DeBach Leadership Award nomination project, other smaller projects, as well as their personal hours. And they've already hit the ground running. They've already volunteered more than 150 hours within the first month of the class with over 20 different nonprofit organizations. They're off to a great start. Our Grandstand Young Professionals Group, we currently have 280 members. Our biggest program that we support is Substitutes for Santa each year. And we hold that in partnership with SOS Care, and we provide a Christmas experience for 150 children in Horry County. We start the event at Fun Warehouse, where we have games and pizza, and then volunteers take the children over to Walmart to shop with a $150 gift card, and they also receive a bag of necessary household items to take home with them as well. GSYP hosts a number of events throughout the year. The Shuckin' on the Strand Oyster Roast, which is held in February. We just added the Birdies at the Beach mini golf tournament that was held at Mount Atlanticus, actually this past Saturday, and a number of other events to raise money for Substitutes for Santa. And the program also provides education and networking events for the members. Our Ignite Women's events, we added the Ignite Women's Council 3 years ago in 2022 with a conference that year, and over the last 2 years, we've actually added additional events. Dr. Connor actually led one of our education events. We host all kinds of networking opportunities. We held the inaugural Ignite Women's Brunch at the Myrtle Beach Classic this year, which was a lot of fun. This Friday is actually our Ignite Women's Conference, and it will be all day at the Myrtle Beach Convention Center. Lots of great speakers, breakout sessions, exhibitors, just a fun way for all the women to come together and connect and champion and celebrate together. And that concludes my report, unless you have questions.
Any questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cindy. Just to conclude, we did want to highlight the Myrtle Beach Chamber in this presentation. One thing that I didn't realize, just been on the job for a short period of time, we have 2,400 local businesses that are members of our chamber, and they employ 84,000 of our local residents. So big organization, represents a lot of our community and couldn't be any prouder. Any additional questions? Fantastic. If you need any, and for the public, if you need any additional information, I was told to go to myrtlebeachareacvb.com.
I do want to, Tracy, you got off easy today, by the way, by letting everybody else
I should have thought of a
present.
hard question.
I want to thank Jimmy Gray just for the help that he gave the city of Myrtle Beach last year with our state legislature and events that we've planned for them and with them. So thank you all for that.
And I would say it's great to hear from the people that are doing all the work for our community. Thank you.
Very useful.
And I would like to say that for the first time in a while, I've actually enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I wish that I had a radio voice for this moment because we have come to the time in our workshop that we are going to welcome Captain Chris Smith to give us the Myrtle Beach Police Department update.
On a drum roll?
And we do need a drum roll if you could provide that.
I'm not good at it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for the time to provide the overview. I just want to recognize specifically that public safety certainly is a shared responsibility, and I want to extend our thank you to Mayor, to City Council, City Management, and our community for the continued support. So our focus is on reducing crime, but also increasing our partnerships. In this slide here on the graph, we'll see this is specific to the overlay district, and what this is actually showing is locally derived data. The most important portion of this graph here that I want us to recognize is we have it broken down by crime type. That's very important because that is how we use the data to be able to strategize our efforts and our strategies, our partnerships in the way that we're developing longer-term solutions or potential long-term solutions to reduce those crimes in those areas. I want you to notice also, this is in comparison, the overlay district in comparison to the citywide Part 1 crimes. As we can see, overall, there is a downward trend in those crimes. We like to do that comparison, again, because it shows in totality between the overlay district to the citywide trends in crime, the actual overall reduction that we're actually seeing.
Chris, can I interrupt you just for a minute, please?
Yes, sir.
We have 3 overlay districts in the city.
Correct.
So this represents?
Specific to the waterfront area, that's correct.
The waterfront?
Yes, sir.
Do we have similar statistics, say, for the BTW overlay district?
I do not have those for the presentation today.
Okay.
This is going to be more specific to the overlay, focusing on the downtown waterfront area as we continue through this presentation for the crime trends.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So on this slide, we also look at the FBI crime statistics. The FBI stats are actually based on uniform crime report data that's collected. These statistics are also available in the FBI's Crime Data Explorer tool online. They also track jurisdictional, state, and nationwide data over time. I do want to also emphasize, as part of the FBI statistics, in comparison to our local statistics, if I go back one slide, we can see that those are actually show in comparison, a downward trend in the actual Part 1 crimes that we're seeing. So our local derived data, along with the comparison to the FBI statistics, are both in correlation with one another, showing a downward trend in that. The FBI data does utilize, we'll say an officer responds to a particular incident or a call for service, and it's a reportable offense. I just wanted to note that if there's multiple victims in our single call for service or multiple offense types, maybe there was multiple different crimes associated to that call for service, the FBI data does include that into their data. So one call for service that we have documented may have multiple victims or multiple offense types as reported in the FBI data. Questions about that?
Can you talk a little bit about how they base their data on the population?
That's correct. To note, the FBI actually does not recommend utilizing sites like citydata.com, and because they're actually basing the percentages off of a population of 100,000. And that may not be in direct correlation with the population that we experience, both on our permanent population, but also on our increase in influx in tourists throughout our season. So that doesn't necessarily reflect the data that we're actually seeing.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So this is actually a very, very impressive number to me. Calls for service specific to the waterfront area. As we can see, the more proactive calls for service, and by that I mean it's an actual call for service that a officer will get on the radio because they're seeing something occur and call that into dispatch on their own to intervene in a quicker response to that situation. Where is the bottom line or the blue line on the graph there? That shows the trend in actual citizen calls for service as self-initiated police officers calling in something happening and having early intervention in a particular moment. So we talked about Part 1 crimes. This slide right here is calls for service that we would deem as more nuisance calls for service. These are like disorderly conducts, loitering, maybe loud music, public intoxication. These calls for service, a few of the ways that we like to assess these kind of separately as well, because we want to identify where we can have the greatest impact on quality of life. And these types of calls do have a significant impact. A few of the strategies we've developed are monthly meetings with the city nuisance team, so we can provide feedback, we can gather feedback, and we would come up with some strategies on how we can reduce these particular calls for service. We also use, it's an acronym CPTED, or Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. These are business meetings, and we are able to come in and help out our business owners in developing some solutions to be more preventative in criminal acts from occurring instead of us being more proactive. In that, there may be some security assessments that we do. Maybe it's particularly some shrubberies or some signage that may help out deter particular criminal acts from occurring, and then we'll provide them with that feedback. As you can see, 2023, in comparison to 2019, we've seen a 42% reduction in those types of calls. Another very impressive number, I'm very impressed with the response time efforts in this. Just to note that the response times are derived, there's two parts to a response time to a call for service. There's the time from the call coming into dispatch, the actual call taker in dispatch inputting the proper information for the safety of our officers that are responding, and then the officer hitting the en route from their car and then navigating to the actual call for service. And as we can see from the year 2019 to 2023, we've had a significant reduction in the amount of time that it takes an officer, or takes from the call for service initiating to the officer's moment he is on scene reduce. Just from 2022 to 2023, we've seen over a 20-second decrease. And when there's emergencies occurring and time matters, that creates two things. That increases our solvability factor, but then it also gives us early intervention so that way we can be more proactive before a scene might escalate more quickly with an officer on scene. This is just a very small list, but very important to consider. These are some of the strategies that we've been able to develop over the course of the past few years in seeing the reduction in Part 1 and the nuisance calls for service. We've had increased visibility. We've developed certain plans that allows our community, our tourists, our business owners to be able to see the officers in uniform as more of a deterrent. The same strategy has increased our officers' visibility to be able to intervene more quickly to prevent things from escalating and render aid. We have our real-time crime monitoring. We have RTC, which monitors our city cameras real-time. They're able to identify something that may be happening quickly, and we can get an officer there in a more efficient response. Our intelligence-led policing. You know, I made mention during the first few slides that we use this data and we break that data down into calls for service. Well, that's what intelligence-led policing is. We use the data to be able to focus our efforts and be more efficient and effective in putting together the plans and strategies to be able to combat those areas. And so our intelligence-led policing unit, they do just that. They communicate with our officers. They develop some data and compile data. Maybe it's a pattern crime. Maybe we're seeing what we call a hot spot, or an area has seen a little bit of an increase in a particular crime, and we can focus our area of efforts in that particular location. And then crime prevention through environmental design. Like I had mentioned earlier, we do assist with we have our community team and our regulatory unit who assist with the evaluations to see if we can work together. Again, partnerships are huge to be able to have some more crime prevention just through the way that things are designed. Maybe it makes it uncomfortable for that criminal element, so that way they can't just remain anonymous, and they know that there's factors set in place that doesn't allow them to commit the crimes they may have otherwise committed. And then our community partnerships, we have our mental health alliances. We also have our opioid response teams, and we work efficiently and diligently with our partners to ensure that we're providing a continuum of care and service outside of just the law enforcement response. And again, thank you all very much. I appreciate the time. Is there any questions that I could answer?
Chris, I have one question, just in terms of, and I understand why the waterfront is kind of the presentation.
Yes, sir.
But other areas of the city, say Broadway at the beach, calls for service, is there a comparison of how many, is there less calls for service? Are there more calls for service?
Sure.
Given all the tourists and everything, and every time I drive by there, there's at least one police cruiser pulling in.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's a great question. The question is, do we compare data from multiple different areas throughout the city in our response? And the answer to that is we absolutely do. I don't have that particular data sitting in front of me. However, the data that we're utilizing, that's a consistent basis, and we use that same technique of intelligence-led policing to identify those areas. So we certainly do have the comparison, because we may see different types of crimes maybe in different locations throughout the city that we may have to deploy some varying strategies to be able to reduce in our efforts. So yes, we do track that, and we do a comparison on what's the best method to be able to reduce the crime or handle the issue that we're seeing in that particular area.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
At Magnolia Row, I think it's been 2 months ago now, we actually asked the police department to do a SEPTED evaluation. And when Brown brought me that report, I wish I had it here today, it was literally about this thick. And I was so impressed with the level of detail that went into that. And I even asked, I said, does everybody get this level of detail? And they said, absolutely. We have our friends at the chamber here today who does have access to our business community. I cannot tell you how great the information was in that report, and I encourage you all to help us get that information out to the business community, that this is available to them free. But it has greatly helped us with things that we can do and be proactive to help better secure our property. So I just want to thank the police department for that, and that's a free service that is given to our business community.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you all very much for the time.
I want to mention the Part 1 crimes citywide, both in the city statistics and the FBI statistics. They're similar. Under 3,000 Part 1 crimes. Do you have an idea when the last time the citywide Part 1 crimes was under 3,000?
Let me go back to the chart here. Honestly, I'd have to do the review of the data prior to 2019.
It's well
which
before,
is actually
it's well
very
before
significant.
2019, and it's actually before 2002.
You on the Data Explorer tool?
I've got some stats here. In 2004, it was over 6,000. So now it's under 3,000.
Yes, sir.
The Part 1 crimes have cut in half since 2002, or since 2004. And how many more people do we have here than we did in 2004?
That comparison would probably be very enlightening, for sure. I can tell you that, because.
Fantastic job. Thank you for all that y'all are doing.
Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, that is everything on our agenda for today. Before we ask for an executive session, I'll ask council if you have any closing comments, thoughts, questions.
I have one. What's everybody doing tonight? Are you going to National Night Out?
Chief is going.
Definitely.
I'm going.
It's on the calendar. We'll see how it goes.
I mentioned this to Fox yesterday and want to bring it up to council. I would like for us to consider doing proclamations soon. One, to honor George Lack for everything he's done for our community. And two, one for Chief Joe Hill, to honor him for his many years of service to Horry County Police Department. And one to Steve Gosnell, who was Horry County's administrator. So if it's okay with everybody on council, we can give Fox that direction to do these proclamations. We do have an executive session today, so I will ask for a motion to go into executive session to discuss, we have two items. One, to discuss negotiations concerning proposed contractual arrangements involving the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, and to receive legal advice concerning proposed contractual arrangements involving Lakewood Campground lease extension. We will invite Fox Simons, Will Bryan, Brian Tucker, Josh Bruger, Michelle's not here, Marla Bell, Meredith Denary, and Amy Newshafer. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second. Have the meeting in here, man.
Motion from Dr. Connor, second from Mr. Chestnut. Any discussion?
Do we have it in here? 5-minute break?
Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. We'll take a 5-minute break before, and we will meet in this room.